How's it going, everybody? I'm Benjamin Wolf, and welcome to the Wolf's Den. On today's video, we're going to do a quick beginner's guide on how to start programming some drums into Reason 12. So here we are in a fresh instance of Reason 12. It can be daunting, especially for a beginner. It's kind of like a fresh canvas for a painter, with infinite possibilities. But hopefully with this tutorial, it'll get you set off in the right direction. So the first thing you're going to want to do is come over here to the browser. And if for some reason that's not open, it's this circle right here. It opens up your browser with all your instruments and effects, utilities and players. For now, we're going to hit on Instruments. We're going to go down to the Kong Drum Designer. Drag that over right underneath everything you have on your rack. And that's how you pull in an instrument to get started into Reason. So within Kong, you're going to select Drum 1, and it pulls up the section here. Hit this file folder right here, and that's going to start pulling up all the sounds you have that you can pull in for Kong. A couple different spots I want to show you guys where you could pull in some sounds from. And within factory sounds, you have Redrum drum kits or redrum drum kits, exclusive drums sorted. You could find a bunch of drums in here. Also, in factory sounds, you have all the Kong sounds. Another spot you could find some drums is within Drum Supply. You have all these drums here. I think one of the best ways to learn drum programming is by reproducing drums from other songs. That way you could understand the correlation between what you hear and what it looks like programmed into a drum sequencer. We're going to try that today by reproducing the song Players by Coi Leray. So let's go ahead and load in the drums we're going to be using. Here we are back at Kong. Just to make sure yours is reset, go ahead and right click on the device, hit reset device, because I've heard that some people's Kongs can load in sounds when they bring it in. It's just a setting inside of Reason, but we'll just make sure that's reset for you so we could start loading in our sounds. We're going to click on our first drum pad here. We're going to go to Factory Sounds, Kong Patches, Kong Sounds and Samples, Bass drums, then we're going to go down to BD compressed right here. So for our second drum pad, it's going to be in Drum Supply, Bass drums, 505 Lotus. For our first snare, it's also going to be in Drum Supply, Snare drums. We're going to go down to DH2000. For our second snare drum, also going to be Drum Supply, Snare drums. It's going to be 505 Shoot. For our hi-hat, it's going to be Drum Supply, hi-hats. Going to go down to DH Night. For our open hat, going to be in Drum Supply, hi-hats. Going to be OH for open hat. Going to be DH2 Trilly. Before we start sequencing these drums, I want to make a few changes to them just to make them sound more like the original. So for kick number 1, we're going to mess with the decay, which says how long the sound's going to be. They go down to around -20. We're going to pull the tone all the way down, which the tone controls how much high end is in the sound. For kick drum 2, we're going to do pitch to -7, which pitches down the sound a little bit. We're also going to bring the decay way down to -40. Because what I was trying to do with these two kicks is have one for the low end and one for the top. Snare number 1, we're going to go pitch -11. Snare number 2, we just make it a little louder. For hi-hat number 1, we're going to pitch up to 19. Bring it down a little bit. For our open hat, we're going to pitch up 11. Bring that down to about 70 as well. Another thing I want to do for this open hat is you turn the mode into gated with the decay all the way down. That way, as soon as you let go of the sound, it cuts off. And that's good for open hats, because usually there's a sound after it and you want this to close, have that closing sound to it. Now that we have our sound sounding the way we want, let's go ahead and pull it into the sequencer. So to pull up your sequencer, it's this circle right here. It may already be up for you, but I just wanted to double check and make sure you knew how to pull it up in case it was collapsed. The circle right here next to the sequencer button, that'll pull it up for you. And to start sequencing some drums in, we go ahead and hit our pencil tool. You draw on a bar just like that. And to start editing inside of this bar, you can double click, or you could hit edit mode. So when you pull up the sequencer, you'll notice that it's a grid pattern. And you could think of this one bar of music as the whole pizza. And you could break up the pizza into different sections. You could break it up into fourths, eighths, sixteenths, 30 seconds, and so on. What this basically is telling you is how many times the drums can hit within a bar of music. So for sixteenths, for example, if you lay down a hi-hat every 16th, for one bar of music, it's going to hit 16 times. And for our purpose today, we're going to stick with the 16ths. To kind of zoom out to see a little bit farther, it's this button right here, or this slider right here. And our pattern is going to be 4 bars long. So we can go ahead and grab the arrow right here on the top of this green bar, slide it out to 4 bars worth of music. That way we could start sequencing our pattern. For these Coi Leray drums, the pattern's at 105 beats per minute. You could see that right here. If you want your song faster or slower, this is where you change the BPM of the song. We're going to start with the snare drum because they tend to always fall on the 2 and 4 in the drum pattern, which is the 2nd and 4th of the 1, 2, 3, and 4 of that one bar. Always falls on the 2nd and 4th most of the time. And one thing I do need to mention is this slip clap type sound right here. You could hear how the sound comes in a little bit before the main hit of the sound. So you have to slide that a little bit forward. This is your position right here. Slide that to 191. All right, let's go ahead and move in our kick. So these, if you break it up into 16ths like we were talking about, it's going to be on the 1st and 2nd 16th, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7th, and 9th for this first bar. For the second bar, it's going to be on the 1st, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9th. That kick pattern repeats for the 3rd bar and the 4th bar as well. So to copy that over, go ahead and press Control C. Click on your third bar, then Control V. So that's good for that bottom lower end layer of the kick. We're going to put in that top kick too with just the click over top of this. It's going to be exactly laid over those low end kicks because that's the top end to that low end of that kick. So go ahead and lay it right over all those kick drums that you laid down. All right, let's go ahead and lay in that hi-hat. So the hi-hat pattern of this tends to follow the kick a lot. It's going to be right over top the first 4 kicks of this first bar. It's going to be over top of the first kick of the second bar. You're going to skip these 2 kicks here. And then for the third and fourth bar, it's a little bit different. It's going to be on the first 16th, the 5th, the 9th. So it doesn't follow exactly over the kicks. Then again on this fourth bar, it's right above the kick. Doesn't hit on both of these kicks, but it does hit on the second. So now let's go ahead and add that open hat. As you can see, the open hat's not used too much. It's on the second bar, and it's going to be right between the kick drum and that snare drum. And it's on the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11th, 16th, and it goes for 2 16ths, or 1/8. Same thing again on bar 3 and 4. It's just on the fourth bar, right in between that kick and the second snare. That's going to do it for the drum pattern. It's pretty basic. That's why I chose it for a good beginner drum programming pattern. But if you want to see some advanced tips, one of the things I like to do, instead of putting all the drums onto one Kong, I actually like to separate all the sounds into different Kong or different redrum or red drum instances. So instead of having the kick, snare, hi-hat, all that stuff on one instance of Kong, you can actually go in, say you just want the kicks on this Kong. So you erase everything else, and this Kong is just going to have the snares. This third Kong would just have the hi-hats. So now you can see up here, they all have their own tracks. The reason I like to separate kick, snare, and hi-hat and stuff like that into its own instances of Kong is so I could process the sounds individually. Let's say I want to add an EQ to the kick. I can drag an EQ underneath this Kong that has just the kick on it, and I could start manipulating that sound by itself. So for example, this song, I think it has some reverb on the snare. So if I don't want to use the snare inside of Kong, I can find the instance that has the snare drum in our mixer up here. That way it only affects the snare drum. And after you have all these sounds separated, you can always group them back into a bus and further process that bus, kind of like a drum channel or a drum bus. You can put something on it, let's say a bus compressor. You can have the normal compression, or you could do something like a parallel compression, where you let some of the signal through and have a very heavily processed and compressed signal coming through as well. Thank you for joining me in this tutorial. Hopefully you learned something from it. This is just scratching the surface of Reason 12, so hopefully you join me in future tutorials, because no matter what you know, there's always more to learn. Thanks again. See you next time.